Okay, so this is a quick video lecture about the different parts of a thesis statement and a little bit about points in a thesis statement. So to start off, let's define what a thesis statement is. A thesis statement essentially has two parts. One is the topic, and that's just the subject of the essay. Generally, what is the essay about? And the second very important part is the controlling idea. This is what you are going to say about the topic. In other words, what opinion do you have about the topic? What interesting idea do you have to contribute about the topic? Something that you're going to instruct the audience about the topic. You have something to say about the topic. One topic can have a lot of different possible controlling ideas. So for example, let's say I decide that I'm going to write an essay about babysitting. Babysitting, that's the general subject of my essay. In other words, that is my topic. I could take a lot of different angles. I could talk about how babysitting showed me how difficult having young children really is. I could talk about how babysitting was the most frustrating job I ever had. I could compare and contrast babysitting as house cleaning as jobs, right? So I could give some important reasons why babysitting is a better job than house cleaning. So here you can see how just having a topic is not enough in a thesis, because there's so many different ways that you could approach that topic, so many different ways that you could discuss that topic. You have to really narrow it down into a specific controlling idea. What you don't want to do is you don't want to just announce your topic. So my essay is about babysitting. I will write about babysitting. The topic of my paper is babysitting. Sorry, kids, these sentences are not thesis statements because they don't have controlling ideas. They are simply announcing the topic. They're not saying anything about the topic or contributing anything to the topic. All right, so you can write a thesis statement two ways. You can write it with points or without points, and we're going to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of each one. So a thesis statement with points is a thesis statement that not only introduces the topic and the controlling idea, but it also introduces the main points that are going to be discussed later on in your body paragraphs. So here's an example. Successful students are disciplined, have goals, and behave responsibly. So my topic is students. The controlling idea is what makes them successful. And then the 3 points that I'm going to discuss in my body paragraph is how being disciplined makes you a successful student, having goals makes you a successful student, and behaving responsibly makes you a successful student. So a thesis statement with points has some benefits. It helps you to plan. Essentially, you've got a mini outline in your thesis statement because you have the core of a topic sentence for each of your body paragraphs. It shows the reader that you're organized. It gives the reader a very easy roadmap to follow. The reader will expect you in your essay to write your first paragraph about being disciplined, your second paragraph about having goals, and your third paragraph about behaving responsibly. So it's a really nice GPS for the reader to follow the plan that you have. It's very clear and easy to follow. It's simple. And it keeps you on track. If you're the kind of student who has trouble with organization in your essay, if you write a thesis statement with points and then you stick to it, you're going to have a pretty well-organized essay. The problem with thesis statements with points comes when they get a little too complicated. Sometimes students write really long points in their thesis statements. And the problem with that is that it either gets too complicated where it's too much information for the reader to understand, or it doesn't follow parallel grammatic structure. What that means, if you follow parallel structure in grammar, that means that you use the same grammar in each of the items in your list. So you'll notice that are disciplined, have goals, behave responsibly. Those are all verb phrases. Are, have, behave. I'm using verb phrases in each of those. A problem would come is if I said successful students are disciplined, goals, and behave responsibly. So having goals in the middle just being a noun is it's confusing and it's awkward. And so if you have trouble with that, then a thesis statement with points might not be a good path for you to follow. So now let's talk about a thesis statement without points. A thesis statement without points suggests that there are going to be main points later on in the essay, but it doesn't actually announce them in the thesis statement. So here, this thesis statement has the same topic and controlling idea. Topic is students, and the controlling idea are the characteristics that make them successful. So there are 3 important characteristics of successful students. So I know that this student is going to have 3 body paragraphs with 3 main points. I just don't know exactly what they are yet. So this is very simple and concise. It's not confusing, it's to the point, and it's very direct. It's a little bit easier to write just because you don't have to come up with your reasons right away. And then it avoids those grammar problems with parallelism. But it is a little bit more advanced because it requires you to write really clear and direct topic sentences, and then to make sure you have a solid plan for your essay before you begin writing. Now we want to talk about some common problems with thesis statements. The first problem that I see in student writing with thesis statements is that the thesis statements are too broad. Take a look at these 2 thesis statements. Work can be stressful. So this is a thesis statement without points. And in this case, the thesis statement itself is too broad. It's too general. Work can be stressful. Yeah, I know, for everybody. So there's way too much that could be covered in this essay. It's not specific enough. It's not concrete enough to be a good thesis statement. In addition to having this problem in the thesis statement, you can also have it in the points. If you write a thesis statement with points, one of your points can be too broad. A successful student is organized in his or her work habits, motivated by a goal, and a good student. Well, the first 2 are pretty clear and specific, right? Organized in his or her work habits, motivated by a goal, but a good student? What does that even mean? That's very vague and broad and too general, so I need to make that much more clear and specific. A good thesis statement should limit the topic. If your thesis statement is too broad, you're going to need to write a book instead of an essay, and you don't have time to write a book, and I don't have time to read a book. So make sure that you limit your topic and make it appropriate to the length of your essay. The next problem with thesis statements is that they can be too narrow. 13.7 million people in the United States are unemployed. How on earth could I write an entire essay about a statistic? My father inspires me because he has worked hard in his profession, exercised 30 minutes a day, and been dedicated to his family. So worked hard in his profession and dedicated to his family, I could see how those could have development. You could write a full paragraph describing those 2 topics. But how could you write a paragraph about how somebody exercised 30 minutes a day? It's way too narrow. It's way too specific. So if your thesis statement is too narrow, you may struggle to find enough support for your essay. And again, you can have this problem in your overall thesis, or you can have this problem in one of the points if you write a thesis statement with points. Take a minute to look at this picture. I want you to see if you can find some differences in this picture. Look very carefully. There's not too many differences. I'll point a few of them out to you. First of all, the man's collar in the picture on the left is black. In the picture on the right, it's red. In the picture on the left, it says fly. In the picture on the right, that word is missing. In the picture on the left, his gloves are both white. In the picture on the right, one of them is yellow. And then the signature, the emblem on his shorts is on different sides in the pictures, right? Now, those differences are not huge, right? Essentially, these are the same picture with very, very small, subtle differences. So the reason I'm showing you this is because this this problem can exist in your thesis statement with overlapping points, right? Those two pictures, yes, technically they were different, but they were so similar, it was difficult to pick out those differences. So 2 points are overlapping, which means they are the same or similar. Don't make your readers search for the differences. Take a look at these two examples. Good parents are caring, strict, and loving. Caring and loving are technically a little bit different, but they're so similar that you'll probably find a lot of repetition in your body paragraphs. Transportation is better in my country than in the US because it is cheaper, more frequent, and more affordable for senior citizens. Yes, technically cheaper and more affordable for senior citizens are different, but again, they're going to be so similar that you're going to find yourself repeating a lot of similar ideas in your body paragraph. So I'm going to show you a few examples, and I want you to think about your choices. Categorize the statements into one of these categories. Is it too broad? Is it too narrow? Does it have overlapping points? Or is it a good thesis statement? Although I enjoy my job, I sometimes tire of the long hours, the stress, and the pressure. Okay, so think about it for a minute. Is it too broad, too narrow, overlapping, or is it a good thesis statement? This one has some overlapping points, so hopefully that's what you said in your mind as you were thinking about it. But the stress and the pressure, yes, they are a little bit different, but they're very similar, and you're going to find yourself writing a lot of the same things in your body paragraphs if those are the two topics of your paragraphs. Okay, next example. For me, the ideal job provides on-site childcare, up-to-date equipment, and great working conditions. Okay, think about it for a moment. Do you see anything that's too broad or too narrow? Overlapping points, or is it a good thesis statement? If you said too broad, you are correct. Great working conditions. What does that mean? And it probably means something different to everybody. It's way too broad and general. This point needs to be narrowed down to something more specific. On-site childcare and up-to-date equipment, those are good. I could narrow my focus there for a body paragraph, but great working conditions is way too general. The benefits of learning English are improved job possibilities, a better life, and options for higher education. So take a moment to think. Is it too broad, too narrow, overlapping points, or a good thesis statement? If you said too broad, that is correct. A better life. That's way too general, right? Again, just like with the previous example, a better life could mean so many different things for so many people. It needs to be narrowed down and focused. There are 3 advantages to working and going to school at the same time. Is this too broad, too narrow, overlapping, or a good thesis statement? If you said a good thesis statement, you are correct. This has a nice narrowed focus for the controlling idea. It doesn't have points, so I'm not going to have the problem of overlapping points in this thesis statement, but there isn't necessarily anything wrong with not including your points in your thesis. Bilingual education can hurt students' second language development, limit their social connections, and damage their self-esteem. Is this too broad, too narrow, overlapping, or a good thesis statement? This is a good thesis statement. This thesis statement does have points, and none of the points overlap. None of them are too broad, and none of them are too narrow that I couldn't develop each of them into a body paragraph. So this is actually a good thesis statement. The reasons to learn Spanish are to travel for work and to speak to my husband. Again, too broad, too narrow, overlapping, or good thesis. This one has a point that is too narrow, right? I could probably write a paragraph about how I would learn Spanish to travel, how I would learn Spanish for work, but could I really write an entire paragraph about learning Spanish to speak to my husband? No, that would be too much. That's way too specific, and it needs to be broadened out a little bit. Living in a different country has 3 effects on people's lives: too broad, too narrow, overlapping, or good thesis. It's a good thesis statement. Again, this doesn't include points, so it avoids a lot of the problems that we have, but it's not too broad, it's not too narrow. It has a clear controlling idea. Students cheat because they don't understand the material, they are lazy, and they don't want to work hard. This one is overlapping points. Can you tell which points are overlapping? If you said lazy and don't want to work hard, that's correct, right? Not wanting to work hard and being lazy are basically the same thing. So you're going to have a lot of repetition in those 2 body paragraphs. I want to remind you of a couple last things about thesis statements. Thesis statements and topic sentences kind of build a bridge that holds your essay together. If you think of your thesis statement as what carries you across from one side to the other, you can think of your topic sentences as the columns that hold up the bridge that carry you across the water. But even if you have good, strong, solid topic sentences that hold up your thesis statement, eventually your essay will crumble, just like a bridge will crumble if it doesn't have a good foundation. So the details, the examples, the explanations, the evidence that you give to support your topic sentences, that's like the foundation of the bridge that keeps it strong and standing for a long time. You can use a few different ways to order your thesis statements. If you have a point that you think is the strongest, you want to have that be the last point that you make in your essay. So if you do a thesis statement with points, have a strong point first, a stronger point second, and then your strongest point third. Or you could do the sandwich order. If you feel like you have 2 really strong points that are equally strong, and you have one point that's strong but not quite as strong as the other 2, you could put one stronger point first and your second stronger point at the end, and then your strong point that's not quite as strong in the middle. Or if you're writing something that has to do with time order, or the order that something happens, you can just simply put them in order 1, 2, 3, and that works as well. All right, that's it for thesis statements. If you have any questions, just let me know.